could you walk me through what Skyscanner's setup for incidents was like before Incident IO came along?
Before we were using Slack, obviously, and I think many of your customers are probably going to be sitting on Slack. And our messages tended to be like just free format. We would just format them on the fly and get them sent out. Um, so that is difficult when you're trying to manage an incident. And we recognised how difficult this was, so we took about developing our own solution, which worked really well, but it was only really suitable for one class of incidents. And we ended up with a huge list of feature requests to enhance the service we'd written. But we just couldn't deliver on that because we have a platform to run. We have flight search experience to run, hotels to run, car hire to run at Skyscanner. So we want to be focused on where we deliver value. So we went out to the market, looked around, and boiled that down to two potential solutions. Obviously, we ended up with Incident IO.
A very smart decision, a good one there, John. You know, it's
absolutely.
um, I remember you sort of walking me through, in fact, up in your offices in Edinburgh, like walking me through the solution that you had built, and it was like really, really solid. It was there's a lot of things in there, and in fact, there's things that
Yep.
we ended up sort of adopting from that tool and building into Incident IO. I guess given how far along you were, like, was there in your mind like a set of like non-negotiable things that like when you were going to go and choose a vendor that you were like it has to be able to do this, or were you comfortable like it sort of does some of it and I trust that the rest will come when they build it later kind of thing?
Yeah, our must-haves were really built on what platforms people were sitting on. So first of all, what is it? A fully SaaS solution that sat outside of our own infrastructure. We've had situations in the past where our infrastructure was unavailable, so was our incident bot. So that was one thing, and it had to be Slack first. That was the other absolute must for any solution. And we use Jira in the back end, so the ability to link in with Atlassian products was key for us. The rest of the features, they a lot of the features were already there within Incident IO, but with our experience of having written our own solution and having ran many incidents across our organization, we just thought that there was more that we could offer in terms of a relationship. So when we were looking for a partner, we wanted to be sure that it was people we could work with, and we weren't just buying a product off the shelf and then forgetting about that relationship, and being part of the journey and enhancing the product. And obvious advantages for us, but advantages for our partner. It's a two-way relationship for us.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think for us, like when you came and started talking to us, like we spoke a few times over sort of like
Yeah,
various times over Incident IO's history, and like the first time we ended up speaking to you, I remember just like all of the requirements that what you had and what you'd built, and I think arguably at the time on some dimensions it was like quite far ahead of what we had at Incident IO. Like
yeah,
specific things being how tight your build was with Jira, for example. At the time, we sort of could create a ticket, and that was
yeah.
sort of pretty much it.
Just reflecting on that Jira situation, we were still on Jira Server. It was our own in-house Jira that we were running, and Incident IO, like many other products, wasn't set up for Jira Server. Jira Cloud, yes, that was all there, but not Jira Server. So I think within the space of one evening, or maybe a couple of evenings, some of the fine engineers at Incident IO got the basic functionality working, which was excellent.
Yeah, I got to see the other side of that few evenings. So I think it was Isaac that went deep into
It
into
was
the
actually,
hole,
yeah.
and there was lots of expletives in the office. I think anyone who's built against Jira knows how hard and challenging it could be, and then it's sort of like that times a million when it's Jira Server.
Yeah,
But yeah, it was great. I think that is honestly like a really good example though of where the partnership is great for us, and where when you find folks that are trying to sort of like pull new functionality out of the product, but in a direction that you kind of want to go. That's the dream scenario. Like the worst kind of way that this sort of transpires is where you find someone who's like, oh, I want all the color scheme changed to be like this and that, and the buttons moved around. You're like, okay, but it's not really the thing. Whereas you get like, I genuinely feel like over the time with you folks, it's been like, great, here are the things that are actually challenging, and for us, most of that stuff, if not all of it, is like, well, I can see exactly how that levels up everything for all of our customers. And so it's sort of this nice sort of like reinforcing, strengthening cycle kind of thing.
Definitely, definitely. Just reflecting on that situation there, that was the point where I got absolutely huge confidence that Incident IO were the right choice. That speed of iteration is fantastic. And one thing I would say is that I'm actually struggling now to keep up with the speed of iteration within the organization. Tech's easy to implement sometimes. What is harder is actually getting people to use it, training them, keeping them up to speed on everything that's available.
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of avenue to explore. Like how has the partnership been in terms of sort of support from Incident IO on like the non-product side of things? Like how's that been working for you?
It's excellent. We've got a really positive relationship, and that starts with having regular catch-ups. We're actually weekly meetings that we have with the team, and at times that will involve bringing in certain subject specialists within Incident IO who are focused on a product feature. So again, we get direct input to the people, and we're not having to go through a filter, which you may have to do at some other organisation, where you're going through some salesperson. The In terms of the support, we're connected with Slack. As I mentioned earlier, we're both Slack first organizations, and that real time connection with people is fantastic. You get in a conversation straight away, and if you need to actually speak to someone, it's straight onto Zoom or a huddle or whatever you need to do.
Yeah, I think it's something I've kind of looked at in the model of like how we've set things up, and like the benefit of the fact that we're building a product on Slack is that all the people we're sort of have that we onboard as customers also have Slack. But that Slack Connect thing, it's subtle, but I think the difference in the way that the model and the interactions work is very very different from say like an intercom or a Zendesk or a email type
Ah,
support, right? Which is where
huge.
I sort of don't routinely give feedback to most SaaS providers, even though I hit tons of friction points. I'm just sort of
Yeah,
like the effort of like opening a ticket and then going probably through like 14 layers of like a little bot giving me like, did you want to know about this? And it's like, no, I want to talk to a person. Please let me talk to a person. And you just don't do
yeah,
it. Whereas I think when that bar is really low, and we see this a lot, like there's a ton of just like, oh, I bumped into a minor rough edge here. It's like, I don't care like tons about it, but like, hey, this is some input for you, and we get loads of that, and it's like that stuff is just like absolute gold because it's often the accumulation of like lots of little nits in products that
yeah.
lead to it not feeling so great.
Absolutely. You don't want to die from 1,000 cuts, and all these little problems are all these little cuts.
Yeah, for sure. I guess back to like your decision to like switch from sort of having built a thing to buying a thing. Was there anything in your mind that was like a sort of I don't know, like a concern for you, or a sort of a flag that you were like, oh, this is worrying me. Like the classic one being like people are like, if I've built it, I have ultimate control and flexibility, right? And you do have to give that up, and you put a bit of trust in someone else has to now sort of own a bit of your destiny. How did
Yeah,
that
yeah.
kind of come about for you?
Um, so I did have some concerns about how we would adopt the tool internally and the level of control that were given to some people. But ultimately, in Skyscanner, we have we don't run a central function that looks after incidents. I'm responsible for the process and the tooling, but all of our different teams or squads and tribes are responsible for running their own incidents. And to achieve that, they need to have the opportunity to to communicate with and whom they want, when they want, and how they want. So we've given quite a sizable group of people admin access. so that they can use the features and build on the features within Incident IO. And touch wood, we haven't actually had any problems from that, and people have been well behaved. So that that has been excellent. But along with that, I actually get a larger group of people who can feed back, and they provide me with feedback, or even go direct to Incident IO through Slack and give that direct feedback from their own experience and their own view in the world.
Nice. And I guess like as sort of segues into like a question around like what is like adoption and like general feedback been like amongst other Skyscanners?
Yeah, I mean, initially we collected feedback as soon as this went out, and people were throwing ideas and comments in left, right, and centre. So we collected a lot, which was fantastic. And when we looked at the adoption figures that have been provided, that was tremendous as well. But this was all limited to our engineering function, and ultimately, incidents happen everywhere in an organisation. They're not just about engineering; they're about other things. And I want to have a broader appeal across our organisation and have other people using the discipline that Incident IO brings to running an incident.
Yeah. Have you seen any success in like other like non-engineering people? Like it tends to be like if I look at like the maturity curve, you get like on the sort of entry level of like incident management, you get like it's a one team within engineering does their
Yeah,
incident management, and then you go cool. Well, now it's all of engineering, and then it's like it's engineering incidents, but they pull in people from other disciplines, and then the sort of like holy grail is like everyone's thinking about incidents has a sort of shared terminology, and they might start in engineering, they might start in customer success, they might start all over the different
yeah.
places. Like how's that looked at Skyscanner?
But that's exactly how it's worked. So there has been that organic. We benefit from that organic approach, and I've been in talks with our external communications people, who have got a lot of big things to worry about and think about, and how we're perceived as an organisation. So we have to be sure that we're running their types of incidents to the best of our ability, and they always involve a lot of communication. So they're really keen, and we're getting them on board as well. We're also very shortly going to be running a game day with the external partners, a ransomware game day, and we want to embed that in Slack. In Incident IO, obviously using Slack as the front end. So again, that will reach a broader group of people across our organisation as we all come together to run through this imaginary ransomware event.
I'm going to ask a question that I always hate when people ask me, but it's like about like return on investment and like you know people are clearly part of a decision around whether you build or buy is around like what it costs to build it, what it costs to maintain it, what it versus outsourcing that and having someone else do it.
Yeah.
And I guess there's like monetary ways to look at that, and then there's time ways to look at that, and then there's opportunity ways to look at that. Like if you were sort of reflecting on the decision to go from having built a tool and a system in house versus putting it in the hands of Incident IO, how do you sort of evaluate whether it's felt like a good return on investment or not?
Um, that's a very hard question to answer.
Yep.
I guess I would, yeah, because we don't go into that level of detail on these kind of calculations. Skyscanner, but the for us to have developed a package of software as complete as Incident IO, as rich as Incident IO, we could not have done that without a very significantly large squad of people to build it and then run it and deal with all the little bugs that may come along to keep it up to date, and then also to manage the feature request, which will inevitably come along our way. Uh, the We couldn't do it at the scale. We could not achieve that at that scale.